So then is when I realized this is iconic.
A Budapest Komikonon tiszteletét tette Giancarlo Esposito, aki meg annyi emlékezetes gonosztevőt formált meg az elmúlt években. Az eseményen beszélgettünk a színésszel a Breaking Badről, de elárult pár kulisszatitkot a Mandaloriról is, illetve kifejtette, miben volt más élmény a Far Cry 6-on dolgozni a filmekhez és sorozatokhoz képest.
Well, Breaking Bad was a great opportunity for me to explore this character, Gustavo Fring, and really have a hand in creating who he was. I was inspired by Vince Gilligan's stage direction, and I took that and I started to do things on camera that inspired him, which deepened the writing. It was wonderful to be a part of. I came in the second season and we went to 5, and then they extended it to 6 seasons. It was time to give it a break, I think, for Vince and the team. So leaving was, in a way, bittersweet, but it's always more sweet to me because there's a new opportunity right around the corner that's coming. And had no idea that, you know, many years later, we would wind up doing Better Call Saul, would put me in a position of playing Gustavo Fring once again. I loved Star Wars growing up as, you know, when I was a younger actor. I loved the first 2 movies because I felt like they were the tentpole films that really did well and had a mythological story that really was expressed in such an eloquent way. Did I have an emotional reaction? I loved Darth Vader, so I had, you know, a clue that when I was in all black without a helmet, the possibility was that I could be the modern day Darth Vader. I also really loved James Earl Jones. He was a friend of mine. I did a play with him. So I started to think as it went along that possibly that could be me. But in the beginning, no. Jon Favreau called me and he said, here's the good news. I wrote a role for you in Mandalorian. I said, Mandalorian? What's a Mandalorian? And he explained it to me. And I said, so what's the role? It's Moff Gideon. I said, what's a moth? What's a moth? He started laughing at me. I had no clue, you know. I hadn't seen Star Wars other than the first couple of movies, and I didn't understand what that warden of the universe was. I went and looked it up and started looking at other folks who had played versions of that character. Peter Cushing was one, and I started to really understand what that character was and could be. And so my imagination then took off. When I first touched the darksaber, yeah, I mean, having a saber like that, I mean, I've always wanted to have a lightsaber.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, because, you know, that's the light. The lightsaber is the one to have, but, you know, the darksaber seemed pretty cool to me. I mean, I always wear black. I'm pretty dark. I got a dark heart. I got a dark spirit. So it fit. And then I realized no one's had that. And then I had an emotional reaction. You know, by the time I got to the set and was doing the darksaber fight, which I could only rehearse with a broomstick, and I wasn't supposed to do it. Like, Disney doesn't allow the actors to do it. They have a stunt double. But I looked across the room at my stunt double when he came out. He was 30 years younger than me. His shoulders were slumped forward. He was 20 pounds lighter. And I just looked and I called Jon Favreau and I said, John, look at the stunt double. And he looked over at the guy and he went, oh, I see. I said, that's never going to work. Like, I'm a mature man with a mature body and mature age. So I said, you know, I got to do this fight. He said, can you? I said, yeah, I can. You know, so I ran off in the corner and started to work the fight step by step for about 20 minutes. I went back and forth with the stuntmen and with Lateef Crowder, who I didn't even know was a martial arts champion. He's in the Mando suit. He's like famous. And he was just Lateef to me. So Lateef was like, let's go. And we went over and started counting it out. 1, 2, duck. 1, 2, duck. Again, 1, 2, duck. Strike. To the side. Strike. I had 15 minutes. And we got out there and started going at each other. I turned and looked, And he had that big Beskar sword, and he whacked me. He hit me right in the middle of my head, and I went straight back to the floor on my back. Boom! Through my teeth, I was like, "Don't cut the camera." And I launched myself back up and kept going. One take later, you know, he has that little spot to look out of. That's it. And I was like, I'm gonna get him back. He swung that Beskar, and I ducked. It wasn't in the choreography, and I came around and I bang hit him right on the side of his helmet, and it rang his bell. And he stopped, and I could tell he was like gritting on me. I heard through the helmet, "Okay, we're good now. We're even." And we went right back at it. So then is when I realized this is iconic. This is iconic. I went through 6 dark sabers. I broke them. Like, because, you know, you're supposed to pull your, how can you pull it when they see, you know, you got to give it that force. And we also had a prototype and a handle sometimes, and sometimes a long one. But then I realized that I was going down in the history books. This is going to be great. It's something you don't often have the opportunity to do. And coming to Comic-Cons has certainly taught me that the fans they're so up on the history of what goes on in Star Wars. It's reverent to them. And I think it's a beautiful thing. There are huge differences. I mean, so many people come up to me in my line and go, "Loved your voiceover on Far Cry 6. And I say, it wasn't a voiceover. That was me that acted out every moment. They recorded it. I'm in a green screen suit. Every digit and everything that bends, knees, shoulders, elbows, are censored. They put a sensor on every single part of my body. And then I'm in a green screen suit with a belt, with all the batteries, with a helmet, with 2 cameras facing in on a rail on the helmet, and a light shining in my face. And I've got to act through all of that because they're taking my facial expression, they're taking in the room of the volume, my movement expression, and they take all that and imprint it. And then they send it to the animators, who then not only have your voice, your face, they start to make you from you. And so it's a very different process. You're also in a room acting with nothing, an empty room. This couch would have to be green. The walls would have to be, well, because we're in a volume, this reminisces the old green screen. Same type of technology, except in a volume, the whole ceiling is all cameras. The whole wall looks like, you know, a desert, looks like a tree, but it's really a wall of cameras. And it's recording your movement within a larger space. And then the ceiling is hundreds of cameras that can move and rotate and give you the sense that you're on the moon or the sun's coming up. It would remind you of back screen projection, but it's not. It's a new kind of unbelievable technology, so that the room they could make the room rotate. When I was standing on my TIE Fighter, I was in a volume room, and they made the whole sky rotate like it was falling off the earth. And I'm standing on the TIE Fighter going, "Oh shoot, I gotta keep my balance," because it can mess up your equilibrium. So the difference between making a video game like Far Cry is that you have no furniture, you have to pretend everything's there, there are other actors in the room, then you take all that and the animators make it. And you may have to come back later and add some voice stuff, but it's more like stage acting. And so I loved it because I come from the theater. Being involved in that kind of creation is really stunning. So when it was done, or the first portion of it was done, my manager called me and said they showed him a piece of the game, but he didn't believe them. He thought it was me, it was film. AI technology, game technology is the future, because gamers have a certain eye for movement that's different than film people, because you get used to that surreal way of a human being moving, speaking, or being. It looks so real, but it's almost more fluid. It puts you in a different space, in a different world. I would say write and produce. That's what I do now. I produce, I read short stories and books and option the book. I look for large stories that haven't been told. about African Americans that are important. I was talking to an actress the other day on a set in Vancouver, Isabel May, about the famous African American leader of the Roman Empire from 191 AD to 2011 AD. Black man, right? People don't know that. So those are the kind of stories I like to tell. So if I had anything to tell myself, it would be do it yourself. Tell more of your own story. Tell more of a worldwide story that's important for people to know and understand. Because the more I travel the world now as an actor, the more I realize how close we all are.
I was acting. Or was I?